furniture you can live with. That's what you get at DC Furniture, just off the Alabama exit of Interstate 10 on Industrial Parkway in Redlands. You'll feel at home at DC Furniture.
You're listening to KCAA, your good neighbor along the way.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, or you can go to the website at viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. That's all one word. And if you want to support this show, because it is mostly listener supported, you can press that great button that says support, and you can donate whatever you'd like. You can either do it as a one-time donation, or you can be a, what they call it, sustaining member of the show. And so we love to have you there. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I am on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And tonight's show is brought to you in part by St. Teresa's Open Catholic Seminary, progressive, independent, truly Catholic education for ordained ministry or lay leadership. For more information, you can call 1-800-790-9739. Again, that's 1-800-790-9739. And tonight we got a great show lined up for you. I'm really excited. I have an old friend of mine. I guess I shouldn't call him old, but a friend of many years. He's older than me, though. I just need to say that. But a friend for almost 40 years. I know that's hard to believe when I look so young. Just look into your radio, you'll see how young I look. And we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. Bill and I have had a lot of memories together. We know what it is to grow up together. We know what it is to struggle in life. We know what it is to find a whole new life in it. We commonly say to each other, we're lucky guys because we've had two lives in one lifetime. So that's a good thing. And, a lot going on in the news this week. We're trying to do a modern-day Cuban Missile Crisis, thanks to our Cheeto-in-Chief. And we have to really start coming together on what we want to do as a nation and start saying, hey, you know what? War is not the answer. It just isn't. And, we're a democracy, so we can say something about that. That's the beauty about being the United States of America, is because it's the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But if the people are absent, then we really have nothing. So I'm asking you as a fellow American to show up. Make your voice known. Let the other people know that, you know what, we're smarter than this. We don't have to immediately go to missiles. We don't immediately have to, flex our muscles. Instead, let's flex our brains a little bit. Show that there's another way to go at life, because life is too precious to just throw away. What do they say on the old bumper sticker? One nuke can ruin your whole day. So let's try to get away from them. Let's not throw the football yet. Other things going on. There's been some real tragic things going on. Monday, I did a really tough funeral. For some of you who kind of follow along what's going on, when we don't deal with our grief, it comes out in different ways. When we don't deal with our anger, it comes out in different ways. And I don't want to say I had the honor, but I had the duty to officiate a funeral for a woman who was murdered by her husband in front of her children. Again, we got to come together with answers for this stuff. It's if you don't think that alcoholism and drug addiction is a family disease, it is. And people do a lot of things in rage, and particularly you add a little bit of rocket fuel to it, and bad things happen. And these children will never be the same, with all the love we give them, but one of them's 10, one's 6, and one's a baby. And nobody can tell them why. I can't tell them why. It's something that they're going to have to walk through. And if this was an unusual thing, That would be one thing. But the reason I'm bringing it up tonight is I've had a lot of these over the last year where there's been just so much violence. And what it says to me, and this is just one man's point of view, we have to look in to see what works, because what we're doing right now isn't working. And I think when we start putting our heads together, we can come up with some good answers. You know, when everybody has jobs, when everybody has enough food, when we are not so afraid of each other, we have less violence. But when you take away all options, really bad things happen. And we can't wait for someone else to come up and do the right thing. Each one of us has to be the superhero that we're waiting to show up to do the job. And if each of us do our part, if each of us stop minding our own business, instead care a little bit about who's next door, I'm not doing that thing where you see something, say something. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking a moment to care about people, to let them know they're not alone in this world. You know, we saw just a few months ago these 13 kids that were held hostage in their own home. Again, this is something that's not unusual anymore. This is something that's becoming the norm in our society. So we can't just say that, we're the greatest nation if we're not going to live up to what we're saying. And we can live up to that. But it means we have to look at our behavior. We have to look at our false narratives that are causing all these things to happen. And a big part of it is the attitude that I got mine, you get your own. That's not working. It's just not working. And my experience has been, that's all I can base it on is my experience, is that when other people get involved and other people care, lives change. I look at my own background. The reason I'm where I am today is not because I'm a self-made man. It's because there's people along the way, not perfect people, but perfectly imperfect people, who showed me another way to look at things, some real caring, and Bill and I had mentioned a couple of old friends tonight that were both part of our ways, a couple of guys, Richard Peak and Andy Donald, and these guys are not what you call social butterflies, maybe a couple of social vultures perhaps. But they can do one thing. They can love and help show another way. And I'll tell you a little story about Richard Peak, who's a good friend, God rest his soul. Still in touch with his wife, Sandra. And Sandra, if you're tuning in tonight, because we do have the show that goes coast to coast on the internet, I want to say a special hello to you. I'm sure Bill wants to say hello as well, because we're all old friends. But Richard had a tough life. He had been a thug at one time. I think isn't that the term we used to use, Bill? Thug. And he found a different way to live. And he found a different way, a different spirituality. And he interviewed for a job on Skid Row at Harbor Light, the Salvation Army, what we call affectionately the Sally. And here's this guy who's done time for murder, who still wasn't opposed to slap a little sense in people from time to time. Don't ask me how I know. And so he interviews for this job, and everyone who's interviewing him is clergy. They're chaplains from the Salvation Army, very religious men. And at one point during the interview, they said, Mr. Peak, the other people who have applied for this position all have master's degrees and doctorates. We don't see any education listed on your resume. Do you have a degree of any kind? And Richard said, in typical Richard form, yes, I have a PhD in screwing up life. I'm going to clean it up a little bit because this is radio and I don't want no letters from the FCC. He says, but I have a PhD in screwing up life and I found an answer. Well, brothers and sisters, they hired the man. And he did an outstanding job. And this roughneck, I can remember it was Christmas Eve, going there on Skid Row, and here's this roughneck playing "O Holy Night" on his clarinet for all these drunks. And there wasn't a dry eye in the building because of the love that he played this with. What am I talking about? I'm talking about people cared for Richard, and Richard cared about other people. This is the gift that keeps on giving. And it's not about having all the answers. It's about having enough love to pass on what answers you've found. And we're in a place in our country right now where we need that answer to come around, where we need to get out of who's right and into what's right. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't care if you're an independent. Look, this goes beyond political party. This talks about humanity. And these people in these other countries, whether you know it or not, they're our brothers and sisters too. And some of them make bad decisions too. So we're not the only ones making bad decisions. But the only one we have power over is our behavior. And if a guy like Richard can go from where he came from, find a different way to live, to go from being a guy who learned to box in prison and was very good, to playing Oh Holy Night on a clarinet on Christmas Eve for a group of people trying to just get sober and get off Skid Row for at least a few days during Christmas and maybe for the rest of their life, because I do know of one guy who was in that program at that time who's still sober, 40 years, and I run into him from time to time. And I'm glad to say he's in no danger of striking sanity, but he's sober. So, but, you know, that love changed that man's life and many other people's life. And, you know, the one thing that this radio show's about is showing that there's many ways to find God. All of them are good. That it's not just one denomination, not just one religion. We're talking about a spirituality that's deeper than that. All healthy religion is pointing to something bigger than itself. Unfortunately, as they say in the East, when the master points at the moon, all the idiot sees is the finger. And they think that that's the moon. But this program's about going deeper, looking to something that doesn't have stepchildren, that loves every one of us, and doesn't say you have to know one particular name to find this thing, but goes, as Joseph Campbell says, the hero with 1,000 faces. You know, and that hero of 1,000 faces expresses itself through you and me and through other people. And so our purpose here is to be open vessels for that expression of spirit. And that's why I say we need to come together, and what advantage we have that we have a democracy here, that we can actually tell the people that we vote in, this is what our expectations are. But we got to pick up the phone, we got to write the letters, we got to get on the computer. And I don't just mean Facebook and tell your friends, you know, that doesn't count. But actually getting a hold of these officials and saying, look, this is what we expect. Because we know that as a country, we can do better. We can be that light on the hill. We can be that voice that shares the love for all humanity. And it's not a matter of America first. It's humanity first. Because if you don't put humanity first, there's no America to put first. And, you know, we lose sight of that because we start talking tough. And when we're talking tough, you know, that doesn't come out of courage. That comes out of fear. And I've said many times on this program, we have 3 acronyms for fear. False evidence appearing real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover. And so let's face everything and recover. Let's come together as a community. Let's put political names aside, because everyone's doing the same thing, saying we're good, they're evil, and they're saying the same thing back and forth. And what's getting done? Nothing. But I have found in talking to people on a one-to-one basis, we have more in common than we have apart. I mean, who among us doesn't want children to be fed? Who among us doesn't want the children to have an education? Who among us want children to grow up in a safe neighborhood and not see their mother get murdered by their father? I think we all can come together on that. And I think we have to, because if we don't, then we really can't brag about what a country we have, because we've let the country down, we've let God down, we've let the world down. And we don't have to do that. So this is about hope. And we're that hope that we're looking for. So let's come together and bring that hope to one another. And speaking of hope, I hope you'll be with us on the other side of this break. And I'm looking forward to introducing you to my dear friend Bill Smith. We're going to have a great time. We'll see you in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. it's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Want it easy? To listen to KCAA on your smartphone, that is, listen to your favorite programs easily. No more buffering, waiting, frustration, or downloading a special app. KCAA 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and 102.3 FM have made it as easy as dialing the phone. Call our special dial-up phone number and listen until your heart's content. Listen in your Snuggie. Or whatever. Just listen, or even on the road. Call 1-701-801-4444. That's 1-701-801-4444. And get ready to have your mind expanded on the station that leaves no listener behind. KCAA 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM. You can also listen at kcaaradio.com.
Locals in Loma Linda and Redlands all know and love the Family Homestyle Cafe, the home of the world's largest pancakes and the delicious mouth-watering food cooked up daily by their well-trained chefs. Sizzling thick-cut bacon, ham, and hand-pressed sausage. They take pride in the best quality, great economical values, with better portions served up with the pride of local ownership and great service. Near the corner of Anderson and Redlands Boulevard in Loma Linda, if you haven't tried out Chef Mark's Delights, you haven't had some of the best food in the area. And now, Chef Mark is upgrading his cafe and offering space for on-site gatherings, luncheons, and parties. Add a DJ for a great holiday party or luncheon, and you've got a no-fuss event with all the bells and whistles. Call Mark today at 909-478-9996. That's 909-478-9996. Or stop by the Homestyle Cafe in Loma Linda at Anderson and Redlands Boulevard.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. You can also follow us on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, or go to the website at viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. And if you want to catch any of the shows from other weeks, you can just click on the past link and it'll take you to where you can get all the old shows. And if you want to help support this program, you can hit the support button and donate what you'd like. Very excited tonight to have my good friend Bill Smith with us. Bill and I go back a lot of years. I have to say ahead of time that Bill is also a ventriloquist, so if I say something out of line, blame Bill. He probably did it. And Carlos was impressed. I got through tonight where I got all the numbers in the right order. Kind of surprising, huh? It's amazing what happens if you show up sober. So it's not easy for an Irishman. And so Bill was raised in Huntington Park in the LA area, and he also attended military school that's pretty tough when you're a kid doing that. He was also a child actor, did a lot of auditions and took acting lessons, and he was at an old radio I remember as a child, KHJ Radio. Oh my goodness, those were back in the days, weren't it? Yeah. And so, Bill, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
I am very happy to be here and spend a few minutes with you. It's good to hear some of our friends that also got on the right road, and they probably, if you were looking for a cast of other found type people, when we got in that room, we were those other type people.
That's right. That's right. You know, it's a a crazy cast of characters, you might say, proving that God uses the most unlikely people to go about God's business.
Definitely.
You know. So tell us a little bit about your background, Bill. You came up in L.A. Tell us about what that was like.
Well, actually, if you look geographically, I was born in Huntington Park, actually in the Bell Mission Hospital, which was in Bell, but I was raised in Huntington Park. It's close to the corner of Slauson and Alameda.
I know the area.
And if you are looking to the right, shortly you will find yourself in Watts, and to the left you'll find yourself in East L.A.
Wow, so somewhere between Cheech and Chong and Rodney King.
Well, I'm sure they all at one time went through the same alleys that I did.
And my wife, too. My wife is from Huntington Park, so yes.
Well, you know, the thing of being I guess you call it, you know, somebody that's been in California this length of time, it's extremely nice to really appreciate the fact that where I live here now in Redlands, California, and the people that I've been able to connect up with here. I met you in Ontario, California. I did know your mother, and I did know your brother. And
that's how he keeps me in line. He reminds me who he knows in my family.
Well, I don't know, because with a common name like Bill Smith, I usually go in my art career as Bill W. Smith. And that way, that idea of, well, what's he talking about? I am a Bill W. Smith, because common names are very common.
They can be, and you are an artist, and let's digress a little bit. You took a lot of acting lessons, and your mother took you to Hollywood. What was that like?
Well, actually, it was rough, because I found out once I got in that area, it was very similar to the people that were in charge of the Page Military Academy. And my mother took me out of there, and she took me over to Hollywood, took the lessons, a lot of auditions. I got a few parts, and I also did the radio work. And the very strange thing about it, and I don't know, but I'm sensitive, and I remember I was about 12 years old, and I was auditioning for something, and the man, and I'm sure he was probably messed up at the time anyway, he said, well, come back when you grow into your ears.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So that went on my resentment list.
Yeah.
And I'll show you, folks, you know,
yeah.
The rest of the thing. Another thing, I was taken back into public schools, and I thought it was so stupid to be able to memorize 60 pages in order to shoot it the next day. And then because I had that training, they said, well, we're going to do right now an Abraham Lincoln thing. And so all you got to do is get out there, and it's about probably 100 little kids in there and everything. Man, the screen, was there, and, they got the curtains out of the way, and all of a sudden I froze. I froze. So that was the talent that I had to show in that particular place. Living there was an experience thing. I want to throw this in early because, John has sort of referred to the thing of a better way of life, and I've had pictures, I call them pictures of things that I was looking for something. In the second grade, they had something called religious views of different churches in the community.
Right.
And because my family was not really folks that were at the church, we initially had gone to the Methodist church, but not that often, and that wasn't very comfortable for me. Well, anyway, I began to find out in my life that, I didn't feel like I felt I was going to feel. I mean, that's real strange, because how do I know that? And I found myself in the fact of it things didn't seem to be since. I remember because I was born prior to World War II, and I remember playing in the sandbox, and all I can remember is this echo of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Right.
And he said, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself.
Right.
And that made me have fear.
There you go.
And that fear never went away. I mean, anxiety has been with me. I ought to put anxiety in the lineup of what my name is, too. You know, I'm always waiting as a sort of Damocles, either that or the shoe's going to fall or something like that.
Right.
But it's improved because even if you do things like have anxiety and things, you're given the opportunity as an individual to use those as stepping stones rather than tripping over a rock, you know.
Well, yeah, and speaking of that, my experience has been, and perhaps you had this experience as well, I can never outweight the fear or the anxiety. I had to take some form of action in a positive direction, and then it would go away. But if I sat and I thought, you know, as soon as the anxiety goes away, I'm going to do this, the anxiety never went away. It just grew bigger and bigger. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, and you know, I have probably, you know, been afraid of various things that could spring from that. But you know, I'm coming to a point in my development and recovery I have to ask myself a question: is that a thought or a fact?
Right.
Okay, and you know, I have been blessed, the family that I have. I've been married more than once, and I have children from both of those ladies. And I can only tell you that I have the children because both of those ladies have passed, and I have contact with them, and I have had to grow up in front of them.
Sure.
You know, and at the same time, you know, realizing that because I believe they get to a certain age and they're on their own. I think someplace in the Bible it says cut the apron strings or something, or refers to something like that.
Okay.
So I've been able to do that, and I love them, and I feel a lot of love. And, you know, I think for some of us that, you know, had early trauma that didn't go away entirely, it gives us an opportunity to it's a motivation to bring yourself into finding things. Some of the things you were mentioning this evening is very important because basically, you know, we are on the same earth, the same air, and you know, I believe, you know, there comes to a time to where I'm better than you or you're better than me. That has to go away. We are equals, and it's taken me to that point to come to that point. And I know that the people that I work with in recovery and things like that, I let them know that we are equals, you know.
Yes.
And, you know, having time in various programs that would direct me in that path, I came to a feeling of a well-being, and I heard people saying that, and I thought, well, did you win the lotto to do that, you know, or something like that? And that wasn't the way it was, because I believe that I have received that from the people and what they have given to me.
Absolutely. And you know, it's in what you're describing, when you have a community of people where the highest you get is human, and we all have that same dignity, then there's room for conversation. And there's room to get out of what I talked about earlier, getting out of who's right and into what's right, and where we find out we really do have a lot more in common than we have apart. Of course, we're going to have different opinions. If you never disagree, you're not paying attention to each other. But it's okay to disagree on things. Just, you know, don't be disagreeable about it. And, you know, we've been fortunate to run around, you know, a few groups of people that discovered that there was something much greater than being right, and it's called being at peace. And and being happy. Now that sounds funny coming from an Irish guy because, they say, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And if you're Irish, well, if you're right, you're happy. It kind of go like my uncle used to say, I wouldn't argue if I was wrong. But what does it get you? Nothing but misery. And I don't know about you, but my head takes off with stuff. And if there's a disagreement, the other person will be gone a long time, and my head's still coming up with the right answers. And I should have said this, and I should have said that. It reminds me of an old story of a couple of monks. And these monks are approaching this little bit of a riverbed, sort of a stream. And there was a lady waiting there at the river, and she's quite demanding. And she says to one of the monks, doesn't even ask nicely, just says, carry me across the river. And she gets on his back, not please, not thank you, nothing. And she grumbles with him the whole way across, and they get through the river, and he lets her off at the shore, and she doesn't even say thank you, and they continue on. Well, the other monk that's watching all this and walking with him, this is chewing him, and finally they get about a mile away, and he says to the first monk who carried the woman, for heaven's sake, she was rude, she didn't ask please, you carried her, she didn't even say thank you, and it was a difficult going across that river, and she didn't even say thank you afterwards, and why doesn't that bother you? And he says, my brother, I let her down at the river's edge. You've been carrying her for the last mile.
Exactly. Well, along those lines, to be able to, no matter what you've experienced in your life, is to let that be what it is and what it was and how you were affected by it. But then from there on, what are you going to do? And one thing you mentioned there is about the recovery thing is, I think that a person who's been through these situations is the best person. I mean, you can go and get pills, or your behaviors, and I've gone through pills and behaviors and all that stuff and everything, but until I faced them and had that opportunity, if it wasn't for the mentors that I have picked up in my existence,
yes,
I can only tell you I didn't know it was possible, but having the opportunity to see these men and women who, all the things that they go through, and you know what, they have an air about them that makes you feel more comfortable, and yet at the same time, people have been complimentary with me, you this, that. No, I said, wait a minute, you know what, I'm doing this for me, because if I do this for me and find a way, I would be very selfish if I didn't share it with you. And
right.
That's something that's real important, too.
Well, we had a friend, Chuck Chamberlain, who used to say, you are what you're giving away. If you're giving away joy, you're joy. If you're giving away anger, you're anger. If you're giving away love, you're love. And it's funny that whatever it is you're giving away, the more you give it away, the more you have of that. And that works in all of those categories. And, I don't know about you, but I don't like walking around miserable. It's just doesn't make for a pleasant day. And I found that on days I've walked out, I just wasn't feeling really well. If I went out of my way to be kind to other people, pretty soon I felt a lot better as well. It's just one of those divine paradoxes. Well, we're coming up to a commercial break, and on the other side of the commercial, we'll talk a little more with Bill again. And so go do what you do during commercials, and then we'll see you back in 2 minutes.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
How would you like to have a large portion of your credit card debt completely forgiven, both the principal and interest? National Credit Card Relief wants to give you free information that shows you how. Thousands of people have used this program to have their credit card debt forgiven. So call now for free information and consultation. We'll give you the secret to this money-saving program absolutely free. Get eye-opening information that could save you thousands of dollars a year or a month, depending on how much you owe. In fact, the more you owe, the more you can save. All you need is $10,000 or more in credit debt, medical bills, or department store debt to qualify. Call for free debt forgiveness information now at 800-546-2909. That's 800-546-2909. To discover the secret to having your credit card debt forgiven, call 800-546-2909. 800-546-2909. Don't wait, call now. 800-546-2909.
If you or a loved one was seriously injured in an accident with a semi-truck, 18-wheeler, or big rig, you need an attorney that knows how to fight the trucking companies. I'm attorney Daniel Rubari, and I know how to fight the trucking companies. If you were involved in an accident with an 18-wheeler, I want to hear your story. Call me, 800-325-1454. Truck accident claims can be very difficult. There's state regulations, federal regulations. There could be several different parties that may be liable and responsible. You need somebody that knows how to fight the trucking companies. 800-325-1454. I can put my team of experts to work to gather the evidence, to get the driver's log, to investigate fatigue or overwork issues on the driver, secure the black box that has detailed information about the incident, and get you the medical care that you need with no deductible or copay out of your pocket. My team of experts and I will fight to get you justice and get you the money you deserve. And if there's no recovery, there's no fees charged to you. I'm attorney Daniel Rubari, and I know how to fight the trucking companies. 800-325-1454 for your free consultation.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am Father John Reed, your host. And I have beside me my dear friend, Bill Smith. But before we get back to Bill, I have to tell you that portions of the show is brought to you by St. Teresa Open Catholic Seminary. Sorry about that, folks. They'll probably want a refund on that one, won't they? It's a progressive, independent, truly Catholic education for ordained ministry or lay member leadership. And for more information, you can call 1-800-790-9739. Again, that's 1-800-790-9739. Being that they're a good religious organization, I'm sure I will get their forgiveness for messing that one up. So, welcome back, Bill. Good to have you back with us.
I stayed right here.
Well, you know, I black out so often I don't know who's here anymore. So,
I noticed by your clothing.
That's right. That's right. Hey, if I wake up in the same clothing I was wearing 10 minutes ago, I'm a happy man, you know, the new diaper and everything. So, anyhow, you've been involved with a lot of different kinds of programs that help people change their lives. And tell me about your experience and the listeners about your experience in finding a different way of looking at life.
Okay, there's been moments and events in my life that really point toward those. I got to a point of I had to find some way of not drinking. Okay, and I found that, and I no longer have the obsession, but I have the disease. You mentioned it being an actual disease.
Yes.
And then that was my first hope level. I didn't think it was going to work for me, and I was with that program, which I am continuously now, and also I was going through a rough time, and I found another program along the same lines. The only difference except the word alcohol, they use the word emotions. Powerless over emotions, and our life is unmanageable. And I'm still affiliated with them. I have my story in their big book. And to top off where I'm at, I'm a member with the Al-Anon program.
Okay.
And the thing of it is, see, I don't know about others, but in my case, I need to go through those various things because the trauma that I experienced, those were my damages were. The thing that I have been given continuously from the people in what we call 12-step work, or actually it's just loving another brother or sister, is to go on hope, and I call it HOPE, hang on, please endure.
Right. Right. Well, you talked about childhood trauma. One of my heroes is James Finley, Dr. James Finley. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff. He studied with Thomas Merton for a while. He was a monk with Thomas Merton, and he grew up in a really violent home where his job as the oldest of the kids was to sit on top of the stairs and make sure that his father, in an alcoholic rage, did not murder his mother. And if he thought that his father was going too far from the usual beating that she got every night, his job was to try to run down the stairs, get out the front door without his dad catching him, and yell for the police. Now, if you don't think that caused some trauma in his life, it really did. In fact, as part of it, he wound up doing what we call dissociating, and he didn't know that's what it was. He found a very special place. His mother was very Catholic and would take him to Mass every Sunday and other things that took place at the church. And at one point, he found a place that he felt God had taken him to where no matter how bad his father beat him, he couldn't reach him at that place. And that's the dissociative disorder. He later left that home, went into the monastery with Thomas Merton, stayed there for 6 years, and he had his reasons for leaving, which he shares, but I will let him share that as he does different programs. But he wound up becoming a clinical psychologist, and he does a lot of work with spirituality and childhood trauma. And the only way I've found, and I've worked with a lot of people in trauma, and I grew up with trauma too, some of my background, and I grew up in a very violent home where there's a lot of beatings and a lot of, suicide was a family event. And the only way I found to really get through that, an important component of the therapy, there has to be some real intense love. When I say love, I'm not talking about physical touching. I'm talking about emotional, really being there for somebody. What Carl Rogers talked about, the client-centered therapy. And some of the programs you're talking about is very much into that, where it's really, the focus is on not making somebody get good, but somebody come to terms with their life and to be able to forgive others and to forgive themselves. Even when they're the victim, they still have to find a way to forgive themselves because they blamed themselves for so long. Is that concurrent with what you've discovered?
Very much so. And, you brought up the idea of actually, people that are having problems, it's not that they are bad people trying to get good, but they're sick people trying to get well.
Right.
And they may not realize that. You mentioned the father, and I want to bring this up. My father was a violent alcoholic. He tried to take my life until I was 15, and I wanted to see, he had moved to Detroit from L.A., and at 15, by myself, I went from here to Chicago. And I was in the train station going to make that layover into Detroit, and evidently I looked like somebody who had taken a police officer's life.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, and so detectives, they took me in a hall and beat me and they took me to the end of the platform. And now this is before I saw my dad, and they said, if you ever come back to Illinois, we will kill you and bury you, and nobody will find out. Well, then I got to go to meet my dad. I didn't even know what the guy looked like. He lived over a bar, and we were sitting at a table there, and the man next to him says, "Who's the kid?" My dad's name was also Bill.
Huh.
My dad smashed a pitcher of beer in this guy's face, and it broke, and all the blood and all that stuff and everything. I had to come back. I had a round-trip ticket, and it didn't go from Detroit to L.A. It went to Mexico. That was called a milk run in those days.
Wow.
And there
okay.
were times that I ate burritos of dogs with dog parts in it.
Wow.
And then come up through Arizona to go into, to find myself back at my school. Oh, I was toast when I got back after
I
that.
bet.
And I was really a good target. And I want to tell you this: if a parent, an authority in our lives, is ill like that,
right.
I believe when somebody says, well, you need to get God in your life, you picture them side by side as an authority.
Right.
And what's that authority's going to do to me? Look what the folks did,
I talk a little bit about that in my new book that's going to come out pretty soon, where the way we develop our image of a God is we take whatever our experience with our parents have been, we times it by 1,000, and that's our idea of what God is like. And both you and I have had to find that that's not the truth. It's, you talked earlier about difference between thoughts and facts and feelings and facts. And part of getting better is discovering that not everything we were told was the truth.
Very true.
And a big part of recovery is separating the bologna from the ice cream to clean it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. we heard a little more crass way, I believe, when we're finding different ways. But until we can come to terms and realize, no, this was the experience I had with some sick people. This doesn't necessarily represent the divine. That's a quantum leap. Mm-hmm. And for anyone who don't know a lot about quantum physics, quantum leap is like going across an entire universe in a very small space. It's huge amounts of space in a little small space. It's another paradox. And when we get to that point, we can actually be used to help other people recover. Because it's one thing to care, it's a whole nother world to understand. And it's from understanding that we come to care. And part of our healing comes out of helping other people heal. Would you agree with that?
Yes, because, it's almost like, and there is a saying, I love sayings and things like that. The idea, if you give a bouquet to somebody, you are giving it, but the fragrance stays on your hand.
Right.
Yeah, and it can be in a wonderful way to realize that you're getting something even though you've given something.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Speaking of giving something, Bill brought me a beautiful gift. He's an artist, and he does a lot of beautiful things. And he brought me this beautiful thing I'm going to put on my wall. It says, "Enjoy the journey." And I'm looking forward to reading the note that's on the back that you put there for me. And what a wonderful message out there. Enjoy the journey, because it is a journey. Life is not a destination. And we find different depots that we stop at, but they're temporary depots. And we're not meant to stay there. We're there to do some business there and then get back on the journey to wherever we're supposed to be next. And so where is your journey now?
Actually, I would say it's the best I have ever experienced in my whole life. And when I look back over it, it has everything to do with getting out of myself.
Right.
Because you can just go on with that. To reach to another human being, man or woman, and let them know that there is another way. It may not be like theirs, but at least that they need to know it's available.
Right. Yeah, and the more you give that away, I don't think there's any greater feeling than to watch the lights come on in somebody's eyes when someone had thought that there was nothing worth living for, that life was nothing but a giant outhouse that's overflowing, and then to see them discover hope, and then from hope a little bit of joy, and then from the joy they find that both of those were brought to them on the back of love. And it's nothing shy of a miracle. I say it's almost like watching Moses part the Red Sea several times a day, when we get to watch people go from desperation to hope. But we don't get there until we get to desperation first. That's the paradox of it all, and sometimes maddening, because some people will come to me for some advice as a priest, and I'll say, well, you have to let them get miserable. And they'll look at me like I'm just really cruel. I say, no, you don't understand. The greatest thing you could do is pray for desperation for them, because crisis time is awakening time. Because when we go into crisis, we have to find new answers for old situations. And we become open to that. My friend Richard Rohr says it like this, that there's only two things that open the heart: great love and great suffering. And when we have either great love or great suffering, it puts the ego aside enough that the love of God, whatever your definition of God is, can come through, and the light comes through the cracks.
Definitely, definitely. And I also like Rohr very much. A friend of mine, Michael May, passed away within the last 2 years. And what a wonderful human being he was. And it was interesting to see after he spoke a couple of years ago, before his passing, everybody left, and I was standing in the parking lot, and I said, well, gee, I've got so much work to do still,
We all do.
And I says, I stumble and I'm weird sometime. And he said, and I think Rohr says this, falling forward.
Falling upward, yes. Falling upward. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of another hour. And Bill, it's been a delight to see you here. And, Bill and I hadn't seen each other in a number of years. And I was at my favorite eatery in Claremont, which I should hit him up for a commercial. If you're listening, guys, kick in for a commercial. BC Cafe, Kickback Jacks. He goes by both names. I guess one wasn't enough. And I'm there with my lovely wife having breakfast, which is enough food to feed a small village in the Philippines. And I look across, and there's my buddy Bill with his cousin. And so it was great to see him, and turns out that he goes there from time to time because it's in between where they both live, and they have breakfast. And so we reconnected after a lot of years of not seeing each other, and it's been a joy. It's been a few years since then, and we see each other on Facebook all the time. But Bill's been a bright part of my life for a lot of years. Next week, we're going to have another good friend of mine, Carl Morris, who owns the Puente House chain of sober livings. We're going to talk a little bit more about addiction next week, and how sober livings can help, what's the upside, what's the downside of it. But most of all, we're going to have another time of sharing some ideas, hopefully bringing some hope to you. And if no one's told you they loved you this week, let me be the first. And thanks for spending another hour with us here on Viewpoint with Father John. God bless.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM.